Hi everyone, I'm Moira Money, translator, copywriter, and hostess of the Financial Success Summit for Translators. I'm going to be talking about retainer agreements, and I've received a question from Catalina. And she says, I'm in talks with a client for a retainer agreement and I have a question. So she's giving two examples. I'm going to read them out. Example one, the client pays me a $1,500 retainer at the beginning of April. And during the months of April and May, the client uses my services in the amount of $2,000. At the end of May, the client would receive an invoice for $500 from me. Is that correct? And then example two, the client pays me a $1,500 retainer at the beginning of April, so the same thing. And then he just uses my services in the amount of $800. So what happens with the unused portion of the retainer, the $700 not used during April and May? My first reaction is that the amount should be rolled over, but should I have a minimum amount that I keep regardless of the client using my services, since I'm reserving 1 day a week for them in my calendar? Yes, very good question. So really, my answer is that depends. And it depends on what you want and obviously also what your clients want and what you've agreed in your contract. So in terms of the example one, really, it's up to you. So really, you could say this $1,500 includes X amount of articles or X amount of hours or words maybe, and that's what you pay for, and anything beyond that would be charged at this amount. In that case, yes, in example one, your client would then receive an invoice for $500, but that depends. You can also say, for example, okay, if during certain months you've got more work and then certain months you've got less work, and we can agree that it sort of evens out, then that's fine also. So your client would pay $1,500 every single month, and you'll get work that that relates to that amount of money, more or less, and it evens out over the period of time of the retainer. But and of course you would have to then track that because of course you can't have several months in a row where the client gives you more work, because at some point I think it will feel unfair to either side of the agreement. And then if you do charge, so if you don't agree that the amount of work and evens out over the months, and you do want to charge for the hours that you spend beyond what was agreed, you also of course need to agree with the client what happens when they send you less work. So will they then pay less, or will they pay the same amount, or what happens then? And you need to be very clear about that at the very beginning, because otherwise assumptions aren't great in that kind of a scenario. So you're saying my first reaction is that the amount should be rolled over. I think the I suppose difficulty with that is that if you've got other work lined up and the client just wants to roll over however many hours they didn't use during that month, you could end up with with too much work, basically, because you only have so many hours, and yeah, so you don't necessarily want to be in a situation where they send you very little work one month and then they send you the next month's work plus whatever was missing from the hours the month before that in that month, because it can quickly get overwhelming. And so I would set clear boundaries depending on your other projects and all of that. And of course, I do agree. So you said you should have a minimum amount that you keep regardless of the client using your services. I think that's one of the reasons why you agree on work on a retainer basis. So essentially, you're reserving time for them, and it's up to them whether they use it or not. So I actually, what I tend to do if the client says, and of course it's important that you remain in constant communication with them. So if they can see, for example, that they will send you less work during 1 month, you could try and find projects that you can fill this time that they reserved with, if that makes sense. So you could create a style guide, create a glossary, or update existing ones, do a content audit on their website, that kind of thing. So you offer some kind of value for the client for the amount of time that they reserved, and they still pay you the money. I don't actually like reducing the amount of money that was agreed for the retainer, because like you said, you've reserved your time. And also in terms of cash flow, which is one of the reasons why I like retainer agreements, that then doesn't make sense, because then it's like all the other projects coming in where you don't necessarily know when they come in, if that makes sense. So if you agree on a retainer, then I do think it makes sense to, be able to plan your workload. So I personally don't make those kinds of adjustments. The client pays the same amount every month, and we've got something that is agreed. We've got an agreed service they receive, agreed deliverables, and if they have less work during 1 month, we either then talk about it evening out the next month, if that's feasible with my workload, or I will find something of value that I can do for them instead. I hope that made sense, and I hope this was helpful. Thanks for listening. Bye.